Yes, my name is Kuldeep Singh Randhawa. I'm making this video as part of a series of videos that will be embedded onto my new website which I'm launching called www.realrandhawa.com. This is a website that I'm launching to brand myself, to set aside the considerable character assassination that has taken place where I and my family have been subjected to considerable crimes by various institutions. To consider how corrupt this nation is, if you can imagine that you've got some solution where you add some sugar granules to it, and it gets to a point where the sugar does not dissolve because the solution can only take so much of sugar. And so this is the level of corruption in this nation. To say that every person is corrupt would actually be incorrect. But how is it then that I could not achieve success, having filed various complaints? It's because of a process which I consider as legal stalking, where the person is followed, not physically, but through a system where a person files a complaint, that complaint is interfered with. Where a person files an application for a loan, that loan is rejected because someone has interfered with it. Where a person is going to do some advocacy, a lawyer is going to come forward, that lawyer will eventually walk away because he's been threatened or oppressed or told, move away from Mr. Randhawa. This is how it occurs. This is why many police investigations have not been concluded, and so there are various files which are still pending and file numbers which the police are aware of, and they will remain as is because no one is going to investigate it, because those people who are in positions of power do not want to be subjected to a prison sentence because the crimes are quite extensive. The justices of the Supreme Court are fully aware that various institutions are corrupt, and so they are part of the problem. This is why a nation becomes corrupt, because the courts in this nation have fallen. And so I'll try to explain this in my own words by not going into too much technical detail, because I may be talking about engineering matters, so it would not be fair to the person who's not an engineer. So I'll speak as if a layperson can understand by focusing and highlighting on certain facts that need to be explained so the people in the public can understand that this is a serious matter in Canada. So this crime that I'm talking about is not one crime, there's various scams. It is actually state assisted. And so if I can talk about the media, for example, we are familiar with a word called propaganda. This is where the government or some organization has influence over the media. So they would basically try to influence a certain story to gain public opinion. What I'm talking about here is beyond that. This is where the rights, civil liberties have been affected to such an extent that the nation of this country may as well be considered as a crime nation. It's a state which supports crimes. It's not like the police state. It's where crimes are encouraged and moving forward from one department to the next. So now you have a situation of numerous institutions working as one, going against one person or degrading a community such as the ethnic community that is being targeted. So if I can give an example, because I would like to explain to you in simple terms, and this is really for the people who are within the media. If there's a bridge and an engineer speaks out and says, there's something wrong with this bridge, it's going to fall down, that engineer is doing his ethical duty. But where the investigation of that bridge is interfered with and not done, because it was approved by the Department of Highways, for example, so the fact that it was approved and passed, there's implications to those officers within that department. So those politicians and those departments are going to protect themselves. And so they would, rather than investigate the bridge, they would interfere with the person's life who's speaking the truth. And so this is really what's happening right across the board to various people. So I was investigated back in April of 2005 in the matter which is called a quasi-judicial proceeding. It's a learned profession which is being regulated by engineers. It's a self-regulation process. And so the hearings are held in the offices of APEC BC in Burnaby, BC. All of this proceeding is recorded just like it is in the courtroom, but it's held in a boardroom type of setting. Transcript is there, and the evidence which is clearly recorded, I can speak about it in considerable detail if I wanted to. But I'm just going to be focusing on certain facts here. So this so-called water tank investigation that took place, it was an investigation of a structure that wasn't even built. In order for this investigation to be done, I call it a witch hunt. It was a setup. It was an insurance regulatory fraud. It was done in such a way in order for them to proceed with this investigation, which is baseless and fraudulent. They had to create a structure to appear as a water tank. This is how extensive the fraud is. This is nothing to do with regulation. And when you consider that a professional with 2 degrees and 2 decades of experience at that time, for that person to be taken down and be subjected to this level of crime, it can only occur where numerous organizations are involved. So the entire people involved in these organizations, including my own expert engineer, including potentially my own lawyer, up to a certain degree, he had not given me the full defense as he should have done. And in addition to that, you have the peers, the professional engineers, who are like judges, who clearly did not consider the evidence, and that itself would be considered unprofessional conduct if they were not considering engineering principles. And then you have the professional engineers in the association itself, who have a job of taking in a complaint and reviewing the standards of those reports that are accepted, and not seeing that this report that they accepted that was going to be used against me was full of errors. So I can go on forever. So really all of those individuals were involved in, if I can say, unprofessional conduct at the lowest level. But if the structure wasn't even built, and this structure didn't have any pipes going into it, so how can it be a water tank? That information I've disclosed to the Prime Minister many times, and yet he has not issued an executive order to investigate that organization called APEC BC that is involved itself in serious criminal activity. And so all of those people that I previously mentioned are actually involved in crimes. This is not regulation. And so it goes on and on. And so those media guys, if you have children, if I talk about that example about the bridge, you got children and you got loved ones who are crossing this bridge, would you not be concerned? Why is it that the media is so silent in this nation? Could it be that you're bought? Like, really, this is, what I'm talking about is something that should have been news 20 years ago. So this is delayed news that is being told by the victim himself because the media has failed miserably. And so what is taking place in Canada is unique to Canada. And when you consider that we have the CRA, for example, that's involved in tax fraud, I'm going to repeat that. The CRA is involved in tax fraud. I hope you're getting this, guys. And they're filing these actions in court in Her Majesty's name. Where does it say in the legislation in the UK or in Canada that the head of state is supporting fraud? When you don't even care about the Queen because the Queen was around at that time when those actions were filed. You don't even care about the oath that you've taken. So what is this country based on if the Constitution is not going to be followed? Is this not even a matter for a constitutional challenge? This is major crimes here by institutions, and judges are fully aware of it. And so when people are being harmed, they're not being harmed or investigated because they are a good engineer or a bad engineer. This is the crucial message I want to give out to the freedom fighters. And I am part of the freedom groups, and I've taken a step back and wanting to preserve my sanity somewhat. But really, we are being investigated because we speak the truth. Some doctor is incarcerated in North Vancouver who I helped. He was incarcerated because he was speaking the truth. So don't just focus on the medical tyranny, focus on everything that's happened to a lot of victims who were suffering for many, many decades, because they have information. At the end of the day, what I'm talking about is major fraud. And when you do major fraud, those people who have done the fraud have to be held accountable under law, because at the present time, that has not occurred because this country is not being operated under the rule of law. It's operated under the rule of tyranny. The only difference is the tyranny comes passively as part of some legal process, so it's not even realized. And so they think they're doing a passive legal process when really it's actually a criminal activity that's taking place. And so that's all I'm going to say for now. But simply because we are having faith in the system and we appear as being very civilized, this is really how we lose our civilization. You know, where they expect us to say please and thank you when they're doing crimes. You know, judges are called honorable for a reason. If a judge is in a conflict of interest or is aware of a crime, that proceeding technically cannot even be held by that judge. It is that simple. It's a conflict of interest. And so recognizing what is taking place in Canada, this is the introduction of the series of videos. I would want you to go on and watch the other videos. And I can't say more other than there's going to be a background music which is going to be from the indigenous groups, as my way of saying and recognizing their suffering, because I don't think we can talk enough about their suffering. The Reconciliation Day, in my view, is actually an insult on those people, because what we're saying is it's okay to forgive those crimes. Yes, give the compensation, but also recognize those people who are involved in those crimes, and it should be recorded in the books that these individuals in history did those crimes, and that's how they should be remembered. Not as good citizens, but as bad citizens. So watch the next video. Thank you.